10 years ago, police pulled a body from Lake Winnebago. Bloated, unrecognizable, but with one thing that made ID easy. The wedding ring engraved with the words, "Forever, Alice." They ruled it an accident. The man was gone. The family grieved. A headstone was placed. His wife remarried. His kids stopped asking questions. It should have ended there. But last Tuesday, a gas station clerk in rural Wisconsin said a man with the exact same eyes, the same smirk, walked in, paid in cash, and vanished down Route 45. No phone, no card, no trace. Just a glance toward the lottery machine and a quiet, "Keep the change." Before we dive in, if this story moves you, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to keep the stories coming your way. Just a heads up, we don't just share stories here. We invite you to experience them. There's a little quiz at the end, just for fun. It's our way of saying thanks for watching closely and spotting the subtle moments others might miss. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. His name was Calvin Mercer. A software engineer turned small-town fisherman, Calvin once coded risk models for a Chicago hedge fund. Then one morning in 2015, his boat was found floating near the docks, empty except for a beer can and a half-eaten apple. They said the lake took him. Only now, it seems, the lake gave him back. The gas station sits right off the highway, the kind of place with flickering overhead lights and a coffee machine that's always half empty. Sherry, the overnight clerk, swears she knows faces. She doesn't forget. And that man? She was certain. That was Calvin Mercer, she told her manager. I don't care what the death certificate says. 3 days later, Calvin was seen again, this time at a roadside diner outside Sheboygan. He sat alone, hoodie up, took his coffee black, didn't speak unless spoken to. The waitress said he stared out the window like he was expecting someone, or running from someone. He left a $20 bill on a $5 check. No tip note, just a napkin with the words, "Don't look." Meanwhile, back in Appleton, his brother Jeremy got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the line didn't say much, just, "Tell Alice I'm not dead, but don't tell her where." Then, click. Alice, Calvin's widow, had just started rebuilding her life. She'd married Greg, a former EMT, who never once questioned her past. Until that day. She confronted Jeremy, demanded answers. Jeremy didn't lie, but he didn't tell the truth either. He wasn't sure if it was Calvin. He didn't want to stir up something that couldn't be undone. But Alice knew. There had always been things that didn't add up. Calvin's wallet was never recovered. The autopsy had been inconclusive. And the funeral? Closed casket. Now, she couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe. What kind of man fakes his death, leaves behind 2 kids, and reappears a decade later buying gas and avoiding eye contact? Someone with something to hide. Flashback to 2015, 2 days before he disappeared. Calvin had been under immense pressure at work. He'd found irregularities in a system meant to flag risky trades, a flaw so massive it could collapse investor portfolios and trigger investigations. He reported it to compliance. Then he vanished. Was it guilt, fear, a cover-up, or something even deeper? Since his resurfacing, 5 separate people, all from the Midwest, have reported seeing him. Always alone, always quiet. One woman said he was living out of a van. Another claimed she saw him at a hardware store buying rope and plastic sheeting. He never used a credit card, never left a footprint. And he never tried to contact his kids. The oldest, Jordan, is 17 now. He's been told his dad was a hero, a man who lived simply and died young. He wears a pendant with Calvin's initials. He speaks about him in the past tense. If Calvin Mercer is alive, he's not just hiding. He's choosing to be forgotten. And yet, he keeps getting seen. The sightings weren't random. A retired postman from Green Bay recalled a man fitting Calvin Mercer's description renting a post office box under the name Derek Kane. He'd show up once a month, always at opening, never spoke more than a few words. Then one day, the payments stopped. The box sat unused. But inside it, when authorities finally got clearance to open it, was a single item. A laminated photograph of two children, Jordan and his sister, May. No note, no fingerprints, just the photo, crisp and clean, like it had been handled 1,000 times and preserved with care. Alice didn't sleep that night. She sat in the dark corner of her kitchen, tea gone cold beside her, staring at the photo they showed her. She knew that picture. It was taken the summer before Calvin's accident, right after Jordan lost his first tooth and May learned to ride a bike. It had been pinned to their fridge for years, but Calvin never took it with him. At least, not that she knew of. And yet, there it was, in a post office box rented under an alias. Alice didn't tell Greg. She wanted to. She opened her mouth to a dozen different sentences. I think he's alive. I think he's watching us. I think I never really knew him. But she swallowed every word. Greg had always been steady, safe, predictable. But he didn't understand that kind of grief, the kind that keeps rewriting itself every time the doorbell rings, the kind that tells you maybe, the dead don't stay dead if they were never meant to leave. Meanwhile, Jeremy, Calvin's younger brother, started to spiral. He'd been the one who took in Calvin's things after the presumed death. His old journals, a battered laptop, a duffel bag with faded socks and fishing lures. He'd never really gone through them. Now he did. At 3 a.m., under a single desk lamp, Jeremy flipped open the laptop and found a folder labeled, "If I'm Gone." Inside it were spreadsheets, name lists, locations. One document was titled, "Risk Clients," another, "Private Withdrawals," and a third, "In case they come." Jeremy blinked, scrolled. There were bank accounts he didn't recognize, offshore transfers, and names, many names with red highlights and words like exposed, linked, and untraceable. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew what it felt like. It felt like Calvin had been preparing for something, or running from it. Jeremy printed out a few pages, stuck them in a manila envelope, and drove to the one place he swore he wouldn't return: Alice's front porch. He didn't knock. He left the envelope on the doormat and drove off into the thick Wisconsin fog. When Alice found it the next morning, she didn't open it right away. She stared at it for a long time, because some part of her already knew, and another part didn't want to know. But curiosity wins when grief refuses to rest. She read every page, twice, and suddenly, Calvin Mercer wasn't just a ghost. He was a man with plans, and secrets, and warnings. Out in Baraboo, a motel clerk named Edna had a story she'd never told, not even to her husband. A few years back, a man checked in under a fake name but paid in gold coins, real ones, told her to forget he ever stayed. But Edna remembered the eyes. Later, when she saw Calvin's old photo on the evening news, part of a resurfaced or mistaken identity segment, she nearly dropped her coffee. Same eyes, same haunted look. She called the number at the bottom of the segment. No one returned her call. A week later, her house was broken into. Nothing was stolen. Just the DVR was smashed, and the phone line cut. Back in Appleton, Jordan had been quiet lately. Too quiet. He'd always been the more withdrawn of the siblings. But now, at 17, he was pulling away completely. Not just from Greg, but from Alice, too. He'd stopped calling her mom. Now it was just, hey. She chalked it up to teenage mood swings, until she found the printed map taped to the underside of his desk drawer. It had red circles on it. Gas stations, diners, post office boxes. Jordan was tracking him. He didn't need confirmation. He didn't need anyone to say, he's alive. Jordan already knew. He just wanted to know why. At a rest stop on the outskirts of Madison, A man matching Calvin's height and build sat alone at a picnic bench. A trucker named Luis snapped a photo from afar, convinced he was catching Bigfoot himself, and uploaded it to a forum called Vanished Voices. By morning, the photo had over 12,000 comments. Some called it fake. Others said Calvin had every right to vanish. A few said he was dangerous. But one comment stood out. He didn't disappear because he was scared. He disappeared because they told him to. Cypherwing 89. Alice saw the comment. So did Jeremy. Neither of them said a word. Weeks passed. Alice stopped visiting Calvin's grave. She couldn't bring herself to talk to a marble stone when the man who was supposed to lie beneath it might be walking around in sneakers and a hoodie. Greg noticed. One night, he asked her directly, "You believe he's still alive, don't you?" She paused, then nodded. Greg nodded back like he already knew, but what came next, she didn't expect. "I saw him." The words hit like ice water. "Last year, at a CVS in Oshkosh, I was picking up Tylenol for May. He was walking out, looked right at me, didn't flinch, just kept walking." Alice stared at him, mouth open. "You never told me?" Greg's voice stayed calm. "I thought it would break you." Instead, it broke everything else. She left the room, locked the bathroom door, sat on the floor and cried until her legs went numb. That same night, Jordan packed a bag. Just one. Inside it, 3 maps, a notebook, a flashlight, $380 in cash, and a photo of his father from the last birthday before he vanished. May caught him in the hallway. "Are you leaving?" Jordan didn't lie. "I think he needs me." May was only 10, but she understood. Because she'd always felt it too, that he wasn't really gone. That something had been torn, not lost. She didn't tell Alice, didn't wake Greg. She just watched her brother walk out the door into the night. Jeremy sat in his garage, rereading Calvin's folder for the 50th time. His phone buzzed. No number, no name, just a single text. "Stop digging, you'll lose more than a brother." He dropped the phone, walked outside into the chill air, and for a moment, just a blink, he thought he saw someone standing under the street lamp. But when he looked again, there was no one there, only an envelope taped to his mailbox. Inside it was a note, handwritten. "This wasn't the life I wanted, but it was the only way to protect the ones I love." At the gas station where it all began, the clerk was mopping the floor when a small envelope was slid under the door. Inside, it was a $100 bill and a folded receipt from 10 years ago. The name on it? Calvin Mercer. The timestamp? 3 minutes after his reported drowning. And in the corner, someone had written in red ink, "Count how many times I came back. I never really left." Alice kept the receipt in her sock drawer, tucked behind a pair of winter gloves she hadn't worn in years. She didn't tell Greg. She didn't tell Jeremy. For days, she'd open the drawer at night just to look at it, not to make sense of it, but to feel something solid again. Because the grief she had wrapped herself in for a decade was unraveling, thread by thread. And in its place was something worse, confusion, resentment, a creeping realization that she'd been mourning a man who never wanted to be found. But still, she kept the receipt. Meanwhile, Jordan had made it to Fond du Lac. He wasn't hitchhiking. He was taking buses, quietly, always cash. He had a system now. He watched truck stops, studied faces, and he carried a list of the places Calvin Mercer had reportedly been seen. Some confirmed, some rumors, some scraps of hearsay picked from forums. He didn't know what he'd do if he actually found him. He just wanted to see the man who left. The man whose shadow had raised him more than any living soul. The notebook he kept was filled with observations, not just of the towns he passed through, but of himself. Questions he wasn't sure how to ask aloud. Why did he choose to disappear? Was it us? Was it me? He didn't want to be angry. But the anger was there anyway, that his father never wrote, never called, never even whispered his name to the wind. At a rest area near a frozen lake, Jordan sat on a bench with his hoodie up and stared at the sky until the sun cracked through the clouds. It reminded him of the night they got the news, 10 years ago, the moment when his world turned into before and after. And for the first time in his young life, he didn't know which one he wanted back. Back in Appleton, May had started asking questions. She wasn't like Jordan. She didn't stew in silence. She probed, repeated, pushed. Why'd Dad go fishing that day? Why didn't they open the casket? Why is everyone acting like we should just forget? Alice had no answers. And the more she tried to protect May from the truth, the more May sought it elsewhere. At school, she Googled things her mom would have grounded her for. At night, she'd sneak onto the forums Jordan used to frequent. And one evening, she found something that made her freeze. A scanned image of a third-grade drawing. Crayon, faded. It was hers. A drawing of her, Jordan, and Calvin standing in front of their old cabin. The son had a smile. Calvin had a fishing pole. She'd made it the summer before he vanished. The caption under the image read, "A man who leaves his kids doesn't always want to. Sometimes he has to. Sometimes the goodbye takes years." DM, user since 2017. May printed it, folded it into quarters, and placed it under her pillow like a secret promise. Jeremy, on the other hand, had stopped sleeping altogether. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the folder, the offshore wires, the alias emails, the maps, and the one video, barely 5 seconds long, of Calvin in what looked like a warehouse, looking directly into the camera before yanking the cable. The file was titled, "Watch Only Once." Jeremy had watched it 12 times. The look on Calvin Mercer's face wasn't fear, it wasn't shame, it was determination. But what was he trying to stop? And why leave so many crumbs if he wanted to stay gone? Jeremy reached out to an old contact from his days as a corporate auditor. He sent him one page from the folder, a page that showed names and coded notes beside bank transfers. The man replied an hour later, "This is above my pay grade, and probably yours. Burn it." Jeremy didn't. He printed more copies, and mailed one to Alice. Greg was still trying to keep the house together. He cooked, he fixed the water heater, he helped May with her homework. But he felt it, the shift, the distance. He wasn't the husband now, just a placeholder between the past and whatever future was clawing its way to the surface. He confronted Alice again, not in anger, in exhaustion. "You want to find him?" he asked. She didn't respond. "You want closure? Or the man who walked away?" Still silence. And then, "I don't know anymore." That's when Greg stepped away. Not permanently. Not yet. But enough to leave her a note that simply read, "I love you, but I won't compete with a ghost." Somewhere near La Crosse, a man entered a VFW bar at closing time. Ordered one beer. Didn't touch it. He just stared at the TV playing muted coverage of an old fishing tournament. Then he asked the bartender, "You ever do something so wrong you couldn't come back, but staying gone felt worse?" The bartender said nothing, just refilled the glass. When the man left, he dropped a napkin with 4 words, "Not dead, just waiting." That napkin now sits in a locked drawer in that bar. The bartender won't say who the man was, but his coworker remembers something odd. He paid with a $10 bill, and on the back, in faded pencil, someone had written, "Forgive me, Jordan." Jordan found the van outside a closed-down hardware store. It was exactly how the forum had described it. Beat up, windows tinted, Wisconsin plates with a busted taillight. He watched it from across the street for 2 hours. No movement, no engine noise, but there was light inside. And on the passenger side window, taped on the inside, was a drawing. Crayon, a sun, a fishing pole. The same drawing May had found online. He didn't cross the street. He didn't knock. He just stood there, fists clenched in the pockets of his hoodie, and whispered, "Why?" The next morning, back in Appleton, Alice stepped outside to get the mail. She paused, confused, staring at a small package wrapped in brown butcher paper. No return address? Inside was a VHS tape. Labeled in smudged marker, May's third grade play, front row seat. And inside the box, tucked neatly underneath the tape, was a ticket stub, dated 9 years ago. From the very night of the play, she always thought Calvin had missed. Some people vanish to escape. Others vanish to protect. But the ones who leave and watch from a distance, they carry a different kind of guilt. The kind that never lets them fully return, but never lets them forget either. Calvin Mercer may have left the world behind, but pieces of him, a receipt, a note, a drawing, a stare through a diner window. They kept showing up, not to say, "I'm sorry," but to say, "I remember." And maybe that's the hardest part for those he left behind, not knowing if he's gone, or choosing to stay gone. Sometimes the real wound isn't the disappearance. It's the silence that follows it, and the echoes it leaves in every room he once walked through. Remember, there's always a quiz at the end. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you spotted any hidden clues, we want to hear your theories too. Let us know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if this story hit you in the heart. And subscribe with the bell on, because we've got more real-life echoes coming your way. Until next time, remember, the stories that echo the loudest are the ones we're still trying to finish. Quiz. How many times was the name Calvin Mercer mentioned in this story?